Good morning and welcome to ISPA Reopening Town Hall number 10. We're going to give you a few minutes to load in, and we'll start in just a moment. Hello and welcome to another edition of the ISPA Reopening Town Hall series. Thank you so much for joining us. Today's session will be a little bit different from previous town halls. Our panelists today represent organizations that offer accreditations related to health, safety, and sanitation, which of course are critical topics of conversation, not just in our industry, but everywhere right now. These organizations work frequently with spas, and we'll be discussing how those accreditations work and what benefits they may offer those in our industry. We're all very excited to jump into another discussion, but first, a few quick housekeeping items. If you're joining us via Zoom, please use the chat function to ask questions. You can also submit questions if you're watching via Facebook Live, and we'll use those questions to fuel discussions as we go along. Also, this town hall is being recorded and will be posted to YouTube, so if you have to step away at any point or you know someone who couldn't make it, you'll be able to catch up later on these really fantastic topics. With that, let's move on to our panelists, our fabulous panelists. Thank you so much for being here today. As you answer our first question, please share your name, your organization's name, what you do for the organization, and where on the planet are you located today. So Jessica, I'm going to start with you first. With tools and programs like those your company offers, they go beyond even the rigorous sanitation standards most spas have in place right now. Can you share a few key components of what a partnership with your group would mean for spas? Thank you, Jessica.
Thank you, Patrick, and hi, everybody. So great to be on the line with you all today. My name is Jessica Cooper, and I'm the Chief Commercial Officer at the International Well Building Institute, where I engage directly with clients, both on sort of the market development side, but also on the technical implementation side. And our work is all focused on utilizing buildings and places and spaces to improve human health and well-being. So we set forward standards and certification programs that utilize tools related to design, building operations, HR policies, and even set performance standards that really focus on supporting human health and well-being. And one of those standards, one of those programs is the health safety rating, which we'll be focusing on quite a bit today. So our organization is headquartered in New York City. So I am typically based in Brooklyn, but as you can probably tell by the wood paneling behind me, I'm not in Brooklyn right now. I'm located upstate New York in the Finger Lakes region. So dialing in from New York today. We do have offices all around the world though. So you can find us in Australia, in Asia, in Europe, and all across the US. So Patrick, your question was about how the tools and programs that we offer, how they go beyond even the rigorous cleaning protocols. And I guess, you know, I should say that all of our standards at IWBI are holistic in nature, sort of understanding that there is no one end-all be-all solution that will support human health and well-being, and certainly not one end-all solution that will support health and safety. So our standard is holistic based, and when we looked at really creating a program that would be focused on supporting a post-COVID environment, health and safety in a post-COVID environment. We wanted to take a holistic perspective from that standpoint as well. So the health safety rating is an evidence-based program, and it was informed by work that we did with a global task force made up of over 600 experts from around the world, as well as an advisory that we stood up on hotels and resorts, and institutional research that we leveraged from organizations like CDC and World Health Organization. So in this holistic approach, we recognize that there were certainly issues related to surface spread as it relates to COVID specifically, which can be addressed by rigorous cleaning and sanitization protocols. But also there's behavioral spread, and that relates to things like physical distancing, hand washing, and mask wearing. And then there's airborne spread as well, which relates to things like density within interior environments, ventilation rates, and filtration that's being used for the air within your space. So we started to recognize that we had a lot more to add beyond cleaning and sanitization protocols, yet we still wanted the program to be simple and effective. So some of the additional strategies that we cover within the health safety rating include reducing surface contact, sort of the contact that you're having with different surfaces that may carry the virus. We actually have a new feature that we're rolling out. We rolled out a couple days ago, actually, on reducing human contact with respiratory particles and surfaces that may carry pathogens. We have a whole section focused on emergency preparedness programs, planning for things like business continuity if there's an emergency that takes place, thinking about things like healthy reentry, putting resources in place to have resiliency during a time of emergency, and so on and so forth. We have a whole section on health service resources, which looks at providing sick leaves and health benefits, supporting mental health and recovery, as well as making accommodations for future vaccines. And then, as I mentioned, we have a section on air and water quality, which looks at assessing and improving ventilation rates, as well as filtration, and on an ongoing basis, monitoring air and water quality, which we know is a real issue. And then finally, a section on stakeholder engagement and communication, looking at really affecting behavioral change through education, signage, and overall promotion of health and wellness benefits overall.
Jessica, thank you for that. And I think the description you just gave of the services really sort of highlighted that holistic approach, which was going to be a follow-up question for you. But we see that you're addressing the full range of exposure points and how we can address those within our industry. And I would imagine there'll be some questions around air quality and how we manage that and how we measure that. Can you also speak a little bit just to the difference between cleaning and sanitizing and what it means when you use those two words?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I probably can't answer the specific nuances, but there's sort of a difference between cleaning something and actually sanitizing something. And as I understand it, you want to be doing both. You want to make sure the surface itself is cleaned of any dust and debris, first and foremost, dirt, and then you could actually go through a process of sanitizing it, which would take care of more of the microbes and bacteria. So we address both within our holistic program, the Well Building Standard, but also within the health safety rating and looking at both cleaning and sanitizing, especially high touch surfaces within a space.
That's great. And you mentioned in your opening about spreading the virus through air, being airborne. In your estimation, in your understanding of the technology and of how that is prevented, we are within our industry breaking that 6-foot barrier every time we perform a service. And right now we are wearing masks, we're wearing visors, our guests are wearing masks and visors. In your estimation and your understanding of the data as it exists today, that seems to be a very effective tool to use to prevent the spread. We have that case in Georgia where the 2 hairstylists who were positive worked on hundreds of people and did not pass the virus along to them, because both parties were in masks, and in their case, the visor also. Are you seeing that as a consistent tool and an effective tool to help prevent exposure for our technicians in the treatment room?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're referring to is in some ways physical or social distancing, and also, as I mentioned, that beta feature that we have around reducing human contact with respiratory particles, which is more likely if you're coming into close proximity with another person in the space. So absolutely, all of those strategies that you've just mentioned, keeping 6 feet apart whenever possible, wearing masks, wearing face shields, all of that is really critical in helping to slow the spread. There are other elements, though, related to how the virus particles are spreading through air that scientists and researchers are just now understanding, but those have to do with ventilation overall. And so some of the other more substantial changes that organizations can consider would be increasing the airflow, the amount of ventilation within a space, either by opening windows and or putting fans in windows, potentially actually increasing ventilation from your mechanical system if you have the ability to do that. And then there is an ability to add additional filtration, either directly within the mechanical unit or a standalone filter that can help filter and purify air that's in within that space, the recirculated air that's within that space. So what you would want to do is sort of look at your existing, what is your existing baseline? What tools do you have to work with that are within your control? And then start introducing interventions based on what you have to work with.
So question for you, you talk about air, the transference, the recirculation of air within the treatment space. In your estimation, what is the time frame for that turnover to happen? Is it 15 minutes? Is it 10 minutes? What is the most efficient way for that air to turn over to ensure that those particles are being cycled out of the space?
So that's really going to depend on your particular space, whether or not you have any natural ventilation, windows that are introducing new fresh air into the space, the ability of your mechanical system to circulate new and refreshed air into the space, and at what rate can it do so, and then the filtration that you have. So there really isn't a specific amount of time that's the golden rule across all environments. It's really going to depend on the space that you have to work with.
And I'm going to drill down a little bit more into that with you, Jessica, because we have such a variety of different types of spa rooms, and some have doors, some are in basements. We run the gamut. So as we're looking at it from a holistic perspective, where's that balance between natural air, recycled air, HEPA filters, all of these different pieces and around how we interact with the air? So if I'm a director in my spa making these decisions and talking to my director of engineering or to whoever's helping our maintenance team, how do we have a cogent conversation around that? What are the markers that we need to look for?
I mean, I guess I would start by looking at, one, do you have any windows that open your space to the outside? If the answer is yes, then you can start there by introducing new fresh air from the outside into your space, potentially putting fans in the windows to increase the amount of air that's coming in from the outside. From there, whether or not you have windows, you would want to look at your existing mechanical system and understand whether or not that existing system does it have the ability to add new fresh air into the space at a higher rate than it would be operating at normally? If so, then you would want to look into doing that. And if not, then you might look into other types of fans or other devices that might circulate the air in and out of the space more rigorously. And then I would say looking at filtration. So standalone air purifiers are probably going to be the easiest thing to introduce in a completed space. Some mechanical systems can accommodate additional filtration. So you might talk to your building engineer or your mechanical contractor about adding additional filtration into the mechanical system itself. So any recirculated air coming into the space is being purified. But if not, there are some really great standalone purifiers that are available that can introduce everything from particulate HEPA type of filters to other very beneficial filters that might deal with things like VOCs or other contaminants in the air that are not as specific to COVID.
That's great. Jessica, thank you so much for walking down that path with me and clarifying some of the statements that you made. I really appreciate that. Patty, coming to you, our Global Biorisk Advisory Council. We need you in this time. Tell us about you, your company, what services you offer, you know, and what are those key components that you offer that we can use to partnership with our spas?
Oh, well, thank you, Patrick. You know, I'm really happy to be here today. This has been quite a journey this last year. I've actually been with ISSA now for 1 year. The Global Biorisk Advisory Council is a division of ISSA. They basically became part of ISSA last year. Prior to ISSA and GBAC, we call it GBAC, I was the assistant vice president at Emory University, and I was the head of all environmental health and safety. And for all my career before that, I was with pharmaceutical industry and a biochemist by chance, and my master's is in law, and it's focused on global public health. And in looking at all that we needed at Emory, I was heavily involved with the Ebola outbreak. I was actually, my team was part of Team Ebola, and we looked at what was some of the gaps. And the industry looking at professional disinfection, professional cleaning, looking at the response aspect. And for me, it's biorisk management. I'm the convener for ISO for development of international standards on biorisk management. And looking at what we have as far as our response aspect, our training aspect, and then the recovery when something does happen, we knew that we had gaps in our industries. And it didn't matter what it was, whether it was a spa, a hotel, a convention center, schools, as we're all dealing with right now, churches. It really has been, it's overwhelming. And I've actually lectured for years on that biosafety is really not just about the labs, which everybody thinks about. It's like, oh, you know, we've got these containment labs at CDC, and that's where it's supposed to be. It's really about our day-to-day life and the application of being able to provide protection and just common sense sometimes things in place. So when I joined ISSA, we were going to be focusing a lot on training and certification of individuals. In January, I wrote an article, and it came out in one of our magazines on, basically the understatement was, a pandemic is coming and we're not prepared. And the week later, the pandemic was announced. And we saw very quickly that we could not provide the face-to-face training that we normally did. And we shifted because, you know, ISSA is the worldwide cleaning industry and professional disinfection industry. And we have about 10,000 company members, and those are distributors and manufacturers and service providers worldwide. We're in about 105 different countries. And we found that our members were really begging for training, and especially because they were being asked to go in and do things. And it didn't matter what industry it was or what type of situation. They needed to have training, and it's not something from an infectious disease standpoint that they normally had training in. And they were scared, and they were, you know, needed help. And so we shifted. Dr. Gavin McGregor-Skinner and I, who's now a director, he's also a professor at Harvard and Penn State, worked for USAID for years, and CDC. We put together our training module for an online module, and I think we've now trained about 20,000 individuals worldwide. And it's that fundamental aspect of, you know, infectious diseases. Right now, it's focused on COVID-19, SARS-CoV-2. But that with that whole aspect of, you've got to do a risk assessment, you've got to be able to understand your situation as to what you're doing, how you set that up for cleaning and disinfection or sanitization, you know, what is the level of disinfection that you need, how are you going to do it, what are the tools that are out there, what type of tools are you going to be using, and, you know, what kind of PPE. PPE is such an important part of this whole puzzle, and are you trained on how to use it and on and off? And then that whole aspect of, you know, that end of, you know, continuing your education. Well, we found very quickly that that's not what people wanted. And John Barrett, who's our executive director, came to me, and we had plans to roll out our facility accreditation program this fall and our GBAC STAR program. And he said, Patty, can we do this sooner? And I'm thinking, with my experience in ISO and everything, I'm like, oh yeah, sure, we can do this. So that's what we did, is that we rolled out in May our facility accreditation program for facilities. And it really is as Jessica said, a holistic approach. It's looking at cleaning, disinfection, and infection prevention measures, but it's all aspects of it. And we base it on 20 elements. And those 20 elements are things that you're going to recognize if you're, if you understand or are familiar with quality management systems, looking at your commitment statements, what are your SOPs that you have in place, what type of equipment, what do you need to do from a compliance standpoint? If you're in the United States, it's not the same as if you're in the UK or if you're in sub-Saharan Africa. And if you don't have rules and regulations, what do you need to look to, and what are the best practices that are out there? We've had about 3,500 facilities worldwide, and that have now, and more that are actually looking at it with, we're into about 80 countries now. The underlying, right up front, which was very interesting, was Hyatt Hotels. And I gotta tell you, they called me up, one of their senior vice presidents, and said, would you consider working with, Simon Marxier from, he's shaking his head, from the Miraval Spas. And I was like, sure, that'd be awesome. And so Simon and I started working, and we put together our guidelines. What we have found is, as folks are going through the accreditation program, some people have some amazing SOPs. Some people do not. And so we put together guidelines, and they continue to be developing. And so we put together our draft SPA guidelines, and we've held off on publicizing them because of meeting Lynn and others with ISPA. And what was interesting is looking at that whole marriage of what myself and a lot of our scientific advisory board has done for years. I've been very fortunate with my scientific advisory board. A lot of people have retired in the last couple of years, as far as friends of mine. So we have an individual who actually wrote the BMBL, the Biosafety Manual from CDC, who is part of our team. Health Canada just retired from our team. And we've been involved with, WHO and UN projects for years. But the beauty of these folks is that they're used to working with individuals, looking at what do you do, and looking at your situation, and be able to marriage that biosafety or HVAC systems, if you're looking at containment needs or ventilation needs, indoor air quality needs, and contamination and infection control. And the one story I have to tell you that Simon had brought up, he goes, Patty, we did the spas. Now, can we talk about experiences? And I was like, sure, why not? And he goes, and the one that I remember, and I can't remember the name of the technique and the service that it was, but it was a Thai massage. And it basically was with silks from the ceiling. And he's like, how do we disinfect it? And it was like, this is really awesome from a standpoint of the application of what I've done for years and my passion in biorisk management and working with people and in different situations, because I feel very fortunate, my team feels very fortunate to be able to work and learn and be able to apply that into a public health standpoint and preparedness standpoint. The other one was the painting, the stress-related de-stressing of painting of horses. And it was like, wow. Luckily, Dr. Gavin is also a veterinarian. And I've done a lot with animal containment and animal research. So, I mean, being able to marriage those things has been just fascinating. And we continue to grow our portfolio. People are asking for more training and more specific training. And there's a lot in the, I would say the toolbox that's coming out here soon.
I have a question for you. You said some very interesting things right now. One thing I want to talk to you about is you talked about day-to-day habits in terms of being a preventative tool. Meaning, and am I understanding you correctly in that in order for a process to work in a spa, which is a business setting, that we need to be practicing those types of, maybe not to the degree we're talking about in the public space, but that we as the operators of these businesses, as a therapist of these businesses, we need to be building those habits around sanitization, cleanliness, in our personal lives, in our home lives. So that when we go to work, it's not like, oh, all of a sudden I'm speaking French and I live in Germany. I mean, is that the corollary that you're making?
Absolutely. I mean, when you think about it, one of the very common things that we teach is, the touching of our eyes, nose, and mouth, that we should stop touching our faces. And that's a really hard thing to do. I mean, that's a habit that we all have. I mean, we're all guilty of it. And it doesn't matter if you're at home, it's like I'll go to itch my eye now or something. And it's like the first thing I think is, where was my hands last? And, thinking about those types of behaviors and habits, I'm a big one, having grown up in basically the pharmaceutical industry and environmental health and safety, of systematic approaches to things, meaning that, on one hand, I'm a person that it's like, I want my ability to make decisions in that performance-based aspect of things. But when you have a process in place that what, if you do A, B, and C, that that D is going to happen most of the time, it's one of those systematic approaches. So if we have those systems in place, then it becomes second nature, and that we learn. When we teach how to write SOPs, we talk about, instead of standard operating procedures, we talk about standard operating behaviors, that you write them in such a way that you elicit the behavior that you want, not necessarily, and that it makes it easier. It's so important, and I've learned that from like the pharmaceutical industry. When we're making a pharmaceutical drug, you want the same drug at the end every single time. You don't want it different. That's important for us as end users, basically.
I think what you say that's very useful to our audience, our attendees, our industry, is that we bring together the operating procedure to the operating behavior.
Yes.
Sometimes we kind of split that. We go, well, here's the policy. Why aren't you doing it? Because we haven't impacted their behavior.
Absolutely. And I think that happens way too often, where people write a policy and they'll just, here it is, and they'll put it in the book, but they never operationalize it. And you've got to get it so that it's operationalized. And it's got to be something that people can understand and be simple. In our SCDU, our Serious Communicable Diseases Unit at Emory, when we were teaching donning and doffing to the physicians who were just coming out, say, of the Ebola unit, we had to make it simple. We had to make it so that they could meticulously do it, but we had it basically plastered on the wall because they were tired at the end of that day. And it had to be something that we also did a buddy system, that we had to be able to make it simple and doable.
Patty, thank you so much for that. That's fantastic. Appreciate that. I'm going to come to you, Sherry. Sherry Orell from Bureau Veritas. Thank you so much. So tell us about your company and how a partnership works with your company for our spas. Sherry, can you unmute yourself? Can you unmute your computer so we can hear you? Thank you. The volume's a little low. We can't hear you now. Do you want to leave and call back in, Sherry? Help with.
Let me.
We hear you now. We've got you, Sherry. Go ahead. Wait, we just lost you.
Am I back?
You're back. Yes.
Okay. Yeah, the video cut out earlier, so I don't know if my connection lapsed, but thank you. So I am the president of the Bureau Veritas Certification, Assurance, and Audit Division for North America. And Bureau Veritas is a nearly 200-year-old, $5.5 billion publicly traded company within the testing, inspection, and certification sector. And for those of you unfamiliar with us, Bureau Veritas is a French company, and that translates to Bureau Veritas translates to the Office of Truth. So we support nearly every industry that would have a need for independent oversight and verification, that companies are maintaining government or industry or self-imposed standards, and everything from food safety, product testing, building and infrastructure, oil and gas, elevators, pretty much everything in between. And specific to this conversation, BV is a global leader in certification, and we created our Restart Your Business Safeguard Hygiene protocols to really support the needs of our clients in reaction to COVID-19 and the pandemic. And to date, we've conducted over 3,000 independent third-party audits for many of the Fortune 500 companies to help them both reopen and keep their businesses open safely. And so some of the things that Patty mentioned, ISO standards, QHSE, this is all core to our offerings. So, what we've done, and there are a lot of people in this space, a lot of people on this call and people in this space that recognized very early on it was going to be the public sector that would lead creating our own standards. And we've done, I think, an excellent job across multiple verticals. And where we saw an opportunity and a need was to really not only evaluation of and the assurances that your protocols are meeting the highest standards of these ever-changing protocols. And we've co-developed our standards with the Cleveland Clinic and dozens of other global voices to really create our standardized protocols and then really customize those on an individual sector by sector basis. Can you guys hear me still? On an individual sector by sector basis so that it's customized to meet each individual's client's needs. So we're also working with one of the largest spa and salon distributors in the world to even further customize our protocols, can't quite announce it yet, specific to the industry, to standardize and really make a scalable solution available to a underserved demographic need. We've got a lot of independent proprietors within the space. Certainly the major hotels, the Hyatts of the world, they've got access to services, and they have the pocketbook to maybe be able to embrace companies like ours. And so what we've done is we've created a very accessible and affordable platform that can be customized and modularized, sort of high, medium, and low touch. If there's a larger entity that really needs us to get in, help them create or do a gap analysis of what their current protocols are, evaluate against that. We have a world-renowned training platform that allows us to ensure that their employees not only understand and read the material, but actually comprehend it. But there also needs to be continuity, because one of the things that we've seen with some of our earlier clients that raised their hand right out of the gate and had us come in and assess their facilities, from restaurants to hotels to airlines, automotive, pretty much every sector you can think of, is that this is going to be around for a minute. This wasn't like, let's get back to work, do a few things for a few weeks, and then it's business as usual. The growing awareness is, the expectation is, this is for the long haul. And we actually, at BV, we conducted a consumer sentiment study in July so that we can begin counseling our various business sectors on what's in the mindset of consumers, right? What the media is saying, what the government's saying, but what's really in the mindset of consumers. And so we really asked them two questions. One of them was, how long do you believe you will be concerned about COVID-19 being a factor in your life? And then the second question, now that I think in certain parts of the world, they maybe were already tuned into the idea of a pandemic, but particularly within some Western countries, in the US in particular, how long do you believe you will be concerned about other viruses and it being a factor in your life? And we learned that 63%, it was an exhaustive base size, it was 1,600 consumers involved in the study in North America, but 63% stated that they expect to be concerned about COVID for longer than 12 months, and almost a quarter said more than 2 years, and that's just for COVID. Then as it related to viruses overall, 2/3 said that they expect this to be a concern for more than a year. And surprisingly to us, the biggest segment within the study, a third, said that more than 10 years is where they expect to be concerned about viruses. So, within the spa and salon industry, where I'm visiting one this weekend and can't get a facial, right? This is a real issue. And so, one of the things that we've brought into the table for a lot of our clients is that third-party oversight. We are auditors by profession. We are independent, and we maintain that barrier of being too involved in our businesses so that we can really be that oversight. So not only do we help establish and train on the protocols, but then we independently go in and evaluate through a variety of strategies that make this affordable and accessible for the spa and salon industry. And we've created a continuity program, because this isn't just, yes, we were great on Tuesday when we were audited, it's next Tuesday and 5 Tuesdays from now.
If I may, can you speak to how you talked about the public sector leading the charge in terms of this type of oversight? How can we bridge that gap so that in cases like in California, where we've had multiple shutdowns and opens and closes, and the guidelines have shifted, how do we bridge the gap so that the work that all three of you are doing can have that recognition at a larger level beyond the private sector, so that we have some consistency, which you just mentioned, in application?
Yeah, that's a great point. So not only is Bureau Veritas working at the government level to help educate what protocols and what safety measures from a hygiene perspective are available on a sector-by-sector basis, but we're also working with some of our clients that are using our third-party assurance as leverage with their local and government and municipalities. We're working with one of the largest mall companies globally, and within the United States, not only are we having to customize what we give as a passing score that differs in California that would be what would be required in New York, and we're helping keeping them up to speed on changes, right? I mean, something's probably changed while we were on this call. But we're also working with them to position the fact that they have been third-party audited by Accreditation, a certifying body, as justification that maybe they shouldn't be treated the same as every other mall in California or in New York, right? So, the standards are different, and if you are embracing a higher protocol of hygiene, you should get credit from that, both from your own ability to market the fact that you've done this. So we offer those services that make it easy. You've gotten your safeguard certificate. We make it easy for you to market that out to your staff, right? Employee retention is key. It's expensive to lose staff, certainly to your customers. But then from a competitive advantage, we asked questions in this survey as well. How important is third-party verification of hygiene protocols to you, and would that impact your decision of which businesses to frequent and which weren't? And the numbers were consistently in the 70%. When we evaluated other things that businesses could be doing, third-party verification came out definitely consistently at the top of that list.
So what you're saying, and because we have a range of types of businesses and experiences, I'm gonna try to distill a little bit what you're saying. So if I'm incorrect, please correct me. That we come to one of your companies and we use you as a source for training and education of how to maintain the environment that we're in a safe way consistently by taking certain steps, whatever the steps may be that each of your companies provides, changing the behaviors of the staff, the associates to execute those consistently, and then provide a certification based upon our ability to execute to the standards that you've set. And that certification means to a guest, when you walk into our spa, when you walk into Simon Marxer's spa, Patty, you know that you're walking into a place where you as a guest can be certain, as certain as we can be certain, that your risk for exposure is low, and that for our associates and employees, their risk for exposure is low. Am I in the right ballpark?
Yeah. Right, and it's a very 360 degree depending on the client, right? So if it involves swab testing, if it involves swab testing for COVID, if it involves looking at your HVAC system, we can really customize the depth by which we go in and evaluate, and then agree on what your protocols are, right? And then you stand behind those protocols. We evaluate from a third party, and a lot of our clients that we're speaking to not only, of course, want to make sure that they're embracing the best standards, that they're keeping their employees and their staff safe, but the concern of litigation and the ability to say, yes, we did everything that we believed that we should do, and we went the extra mile to make sure that somebody was looking over our shoulder and verifying that we were doing it consistently, is expected to be an advantage. If, unfortunately, everything that we have done, somebody walks into your location with COVID unknown to them, and somebody wants to sue somebody, right? To be able to cite the fact that there's this third-party oversight is definitely to an advantage when it comes to the cost-benefit ratio of doing this or not doing this.
So your company comes in and helps set up those processes. In terms of case law, is there any case law that supports the validity and of a third-party verification like Bureau Veritas? Is there any litigation that supports that if we have that element?
So there's over 4,500 cases already related to COVID litigation. I am not a lawyer, and our lawyer would not want to answer. We don't indemnify, but the idea of what is a reasonable expectation for quality, for hygiene, that any business could expect to adhere to. And when a business can prove that they've adhered to the highest standards available to them within reason, right? No, not every spa is going to be expected to go out and install a new ventilation system. Is that a reasonable expectation based on the risk? And then taking it that extra step to ensure that it's not just you saying that you did it, you have proof. Somebody else came in behind you and said, yeah. So
I have a question for the other two panelists to mute it. You can stay muted, just a hand. I know Sherry just said that they don't indemnify in terms of the offering. Do either of your companies do that? If yes, raise your hand. If no, you can just leave them down, just so we have a point of clarification. And I think, go ahead, Patty.
Actually, we have provided contact with individuals who can be expert witness. Not that we would indemnify, but we are working with a lot of insurance companies right now with regard to that same topic that Sherry is discussing here. I think that the key component is that you need to do something. You need to be able to show and to be able to explain what it is that you're doing. And you'll be much more in a defensible situation if you have something, whether it's with well, whether it's with BV, or whether it's with GBAC, than if you do nothing. Because right now the whole aspect is if you do nothing, and whether it's an employee situation or a customer situation, you're not as defensible at the end of the day. And so that's, I think, the important aspect. And I know that some of the insurance companies are looking at insurance riders for infectious diseases, which isn't something that they normally had done in the past. And now they're recognizing it as an issue. And to get that infectious disease rider, you're going to have to be able to show that you have these procedures and programs in place.
That's great. You guys have been such fantastic panelists and provided such great information. We're down to our last 15 minutes. And I want to get to each of you on this next question. And I'll come to you first, Jessica. What key questions can a spa owner or operator ask to help determine which of your services makes sense for their facilities? Because you offer a broad range of services. So Jessica, what are those services? What questions can they ask to determine what to choose from your menu of services?
Yeah, it's a great question, Patrick. And I might actually say, what questions can we ask you to help you determine what solutions are going to be the best fit given what you're trying to accomplish at any given point in time? From my perspective, one of the most important things to think about is long-term versus a more immediate term solution, and how much scope are you able to take on to support either that more immediate solution or the long-term solution. So many of the things that Sherry and Patty were saying resonated with me. The need to take an evidence-based approach, a holistic approach, go through third-party validation to hold not only yourself, but your organization and your team accountable to adhering to the guidelines that have been set forth by the organization that you're working with to create a higher standard, to create a better outcome. All of that's critically important, and we stand behind all three of those things at IWBI, no matter what solution you choose. It's got to be evidence-based, it's got to be holistic and all-inclusive, and it's got to be third-party verified. From there, as it relates to health safety rating, what we're really focused on is a portion of the larger well-building standard that really focuses on immediate acute health issues, which includes COVID and other infectious diseases, but is also broader than that, or could be interpreted to be broader than that. And because it's focused on those acute health issues, it's a much more narrower scope, and I would say arguably very feasible to be implemented in one facility, but also across multiple facilities at scale, here and now, to respond to the immediate challenge at hand. That said, we're still seeing a lot of organizations coming to us saying, not only do we need to respond to COVID-19, but we also now understand how important the built environment is and organizational policies and protocols are to supporting human health and well-being. And they're actually evaluating longer term, even more holistic solutions that look at a range of additional topics like supporting mind and mental health, supporting good access to light that supports the circadian rhythm, and so on and so forth. It's a whole nother panel. But I think organizations that are looking bigger picture, not only to address the COVID-19 pandemic, but also wanting to put strategies in place that can support a longer term commitment to human health and well-being, we have solutions that can bring you on that journey as well. And then, the last thing I'll say as one of our key differentiators is consumer awareness and recognizability of the seal and that mark of excellence, because we work across all building types. Individuals, like actual consumers, may recognize the seal, given that they'll be seeing it on their office buildings, they'll be seeing it on their sports arenas, and so on and so forth. And that recognizability can be really helpful for organizations who are really looking for that consumer connection piece as part of their solution. And given that we don't have too much extra time, I'll mention one other thing that we're really excited about with the health safety rating seal specifically. All of them will have a QR code on them, which makes it very, very easy for anybody who's walking by the building or going into the space to scan that QR code and see what exactly that facility, that organization has implemented to support health safety issues, or potentially health and wellness more broadly, which ties in not only to the awareness component of this, but also I would say the consumer education component of this. Like, part of this is helping people understand what's been put in place to support their health and well-being, their health and safety. And we believe that this small little component on the plaque will help have that conversation. So, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Jessica. Patty, I come to you with the same question. What questions do we need to be asking you to determine what services we need to get from you for our facilities?
So I liked Jessica's comment about also what questions should we be asking. I mean, one thing that I think it's very important is that, first of all, you have 3 very powerful programs here on this webinar, and you got to find the right fit for you. And so, talk to people and see if it's a right fit. One thing that we're finding, and to me, it's one of the most powerful parts of any of these programs, is the sense of community. And for us, we don't see this as a one and done. We don't see this as, okay, you got your plaque, now we'll see you later. We see this as a partnership, and that we're here even beyond after you become accredited. If you have questions, concerns, you have needs, more training, more connection with others like yourself within the industry. We see this as that is such an important aspect of this entire progress or program, and really our response to this pandemic. This pandemic is here for now. It'll go away, but then there will be something else. And we see, and what we try and teach people is that this is a scalable need. What we see, and I always talk about the flu. You have normal situation where you're doing routine issues, and then you have flu season coming. And there are things that we need to put in place for the flu. And then maybe the flu epidemic gets worse. Okay, what do we need to increase our sanitization? Do we need to increase disinfection? Do we need to increase something with our HVAC systems or our indoor air quality? And then you have an outbreak, which really affects your buildings. And what do you need to do? And do you need to bring in a third-party certified or a third-party service provider to really disinfect your decon? I think the other part of that is to understand that you can do this safely, and that you can do this. I always talk about, I've been told that, well, yeah, but disinfection's not green. You can do it. You can do it very green and safe. There are disinfectants out there that really maintains that holistic aspect. And especially in our industry here with spas, beauty salons, assisted care, daycares, we really need to be looking at some of these things that we're doing. So think about how you're going to ask those questions, but it's really making sure that it's a good fit for you. And is this a good fit for what you want to accomplish long term?
So it's really, I'm going to come to you, Sherry, with the same question, but it seems like part of it from Patty and Jessica is that we as the business owner or operator need to determine what those targets, those goals are. And I think Trudy Smith says it quite well, because oftentimes our goals come from, not from us, but from management or above there. So I think that's a good starting point for us. Sherry, coming to you with the same question. So after we ask ourselves what our questions are, what questions should we be looking at in terms of your services that make sense for whatever our articulated goals are?
Sure. Well, I think probably the obvious, you guys can hear me, right? The obvious first question that's going to come to mind is, how much is this going to cost, right? In a situation where many of these spas and salons have been closed for months on end, that are struggling to reopen, that didn't qualify for federal assistance, it's tough. So, the ability to go in and do the very expensive consultative, let's measure every possible nook and cranny of your spa is available. It sounds like from multiple, suppliers here. But, if that's not an option for a smaller group, we felt it was important to create something that was scalable and could be deployed through a more of affordable model. So, going in and spending tens of thousands of dollars is not an option for many spas and salons. So we've created a protocol that a spa, an independent, or a group of small spas can have a third-party audit with our protocols in place for under $500. That was our first step. And then could we do this at scale? So through partnerships, we now have over 30,000 auditors just in the United States alone that could be available. So it's not just the metropolitan areas. So, we really wanted to make sure that was available, and that's the program that we've launched. Also the public, right, and their need for assurance. So very similar to what Jessica mentioned, our labels have a QR code on them that not only can help consumers understand what has been done at these different locations, but it also is a repository of everyone in their area and globally businesses that have passed the BV protocols. We know they will make decisions based on who's embracing the highest standards. So if a spa on one corner is past certification and a spa on the other one hasn't, that could make a decision with where somebody would go. So that's obviously a question. And then how much time and attention is this going to take away from me running my business, right? I am not a COVID, specialist, and I need to get back to doing what I specialize in, which is providing spa services. So, what does the process look like? How simplified is it? How much time will it take? And what will be the ongoing responsibility for me to maintain my accreditation? Because it could derail the business. Who within the organization needs to be involved? It should be very simple and streamlined, so it's not disruptive to the business.
That's great, Sherry. Thank you. And I think what all three of you have articulated is that as we move forward, we are addressing COVID in the moment, but there's going to be a particular and acute awareness of how we're cleaning our spas as we move forward past COVID, because there will be flu season again, there will be other things that we have to address. So these levels of being aware of sanitization and cleanliness are important moving past just the COVID time that we're in. Show of hands, because we were very short on time. Are your, and this comes from Lynn Maestro, who really talks about the importance that we're focusing now on owner operated spas. Are your systems adaptable for the single operator who may be running a salon or a skincare room or a massage room out of their home or a small office? So we do have that adaptability. So we appreciate that. Great, I see thumbs up everywhere. I think that's fantastic. We're near the end of our time today, and I want to thank Jessica, I want to thank Patricia, I want to thank Sherry for their time today and for their wisdom and their knowledge that they shared with us. I think we had a lot of dense information come through today. So my recommendation is that we all go back and rewatch this and take notes and really understand what information was shared with us today, because it was very good information, it was dense information. And I would imagine all three of them would be very open to you reaching out for clarification if you have questions about what you heard today, but really go back and listen and really understand what they were saying, because I think this is the future for us. Before we go, I want to give you guys a quick update on some exciting future ISPA virtual events. So we've started our ISPA series called Heart of the Matter. We spoke to Tembi Locke yesterday, which if you haven't had a chance to see that, it's on YouTube. It's also on our Facebook Live page. And that Heart of the Matter series, we're going to continue because we've had such great feedback from our membership on the importance of it. And it's a great way for us to talk about things that matter to us as professionals and as human beings. We have some fantastic guests coming up. Also, we're entering membership renewal season. So, think about the great content we've provided. We want to keep this content coming and renew your memberships. We need you to be a part of our success. We need you to be a part of our future, and your membership dollars help us do that. And we know it's a tough time out there for everyone, but this is about the success and longevity of our industry. So go to experienceispa.com to learn about how you can join your membership. We have monthly payment plans available now to make it very easy for you. We also have information on future town halls, our chats with product pros, and Heart of the Matter. So on behalf of ISPA and our panelists and our wonderful ISPA headquarters team, thank you so much and have a wonderful day.